Hi guys. All right, forgive this kind of poor quality video, and my pups are in the background, so you might hear them making some noise in a moment. But you may know I have an 11-year-old son, and he's definitely starting to exhibit some physical changes related to puberty, like stinky body and a little bit of acne, and definitely some mood changes as well. And I guess I wanted to make this video because it's finally dawning on me, although this should be obvious, that we have entered puberty. And I guess in my mind, I thought adolescence and all the emotional changes was something that would happen later in the time when our kids are teenagers. But the reality is, and again, this is obvious to me now that I think about it, but we know puberty has been starting earlier and earlier for decades, right? It's not unusual. It's not considered precocious puberty for girls to start having signs of puberty at the age of 8, and for boys to start having signs of puberty at the age of 9. Now, there's a big wide range of about 4 to 5 years from that point at which it's considered normal to be starting puberty. But so for my son at age 11, he's right kind of smack dab in the middle of what should be the beginning of puberty. And that's the beginning of adolescent brain development too. So what does this mean? So there's two big drivers of our brain. I talk about this in my course as well. There's the prefrontal cortex that sits kind of right here behind your forehead. It's the most evolutionarily advanced part of our brain. Lower vertebrates don't really have this part of their brain nearly as developed as we do. And essentially, this part of our brain helps us to think about things in the future, in the past, to self-regulate, to think abstractly, to put ourselves in someone else's shoes. And that takes off exponentially in adolescence. It's really around age 14, maybe earlier now that puberty is starting earlier. But as I learned when I was a resident, age 14 is about when most kids can really think abstractly about things, meaning not concretely, but like general abstract terms. So you start seeing kids around this age of starting with adolescent thinking about death more, thinking about permanency, what does life mean? All these kind of existential questions are normal because their brain is just starting to realize that those are things that they can think about. The prefrontal cortex is really taking off. That is kind of the best driver of our body and our brain. So when the prefrontal cortex is in the driver's seat, that's when we can be really thoughtful, again, really tempered in our responses, not always so reactive. The other part of the brain that's really growing drastically during adolescence is the limbic system. The limbic system really controls emotions. So our kids' emotional breadth, like the variety of emotions they can experience, and also the emotional depth and intensity of the emotions that they can experience grows dramatically during adolescence. Again, starting sometimes from as early as age 8 or 9. So if you have a young kid and you're starting to notice big emotions, big changes, unexpected responses to you in terms of like eye rolling, shouting, getting angry, or overwhelmed when you wouldn't expect them to, it's not that they've become possessed. It's not that they've regressed somehow. It's just that they're probably starting to experience bigger emotions than they did before, and they don't yet know how to handle it. So the prefrontal cortex ultimately is going to help them as they get older to control their limbic system's reactivity. The limbic system really is designed, it's our survival brain, right? It's designed to keep us safe. So you can think of them in this new world of experiencing more emotions and deeper emotions, feeling like they're in a strange new place without a map. And at times it's really scary for them. So you might see them responding as if they've been backed into a corner in an angry way, a defensive way, a fight, flight, or freeze sort of response, right? And when that happens, it's confusing for them. And it tends to trigger in us as parents some reactivity too, because we're like, what the heck, where is that coming from? Sometimes their anger makes us feel angry. So I'm giving you this information so that hopefully if you start seeing these adolescent changes in your kids, you can start to take a deep breath and hopefully not respond to their explosiveness with your own explosiveness, but to just give them some space, come back to them and say like, hey, are you okay? It seemed like you were really upset earlier. Do you want to talk about it? And give them space to kind of vent and find themselves, because ultimately their prefrontal cortex is still also developing, right? But those connections between the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system are not yet developed and not yet strong. So in the moment when their emotions are big and overwhelming, their prefrontal cortex, which is going to help them regulate, isn't yet able to connect to calm that down. And that's where they really need us as their parents to help them out. So that was my thought for this week. I hope it's helpful to you guys. If any of you are going through the same things that I am, join me please next Wednesday at 7 p.m. I'm going to be doing our second monthly book club, and it's going to be on The Family Board Meeting. It's a very short but really good book by a guy named Jim Shields and his wife Jamie. They are real estate investors. They run a program called 18 Summers, where they really help entrepreneurs and business people to think about their family relationships with their kids and how do we prioritize this relatively short time within our lives that we have with our kids. And I really like the book. We'll be talking a lot about it, as well as reviewing my experience having my first 2 board meetings with my kiddos, which we did this month. Talk to y'all soon. Bye.